Why don't you go back to your parents' house after your surgery and discharge? My husband coldly declared, just a day before my breast cancer surgery. What do you mean? I can't see you as a woman anymore. I want us to separate. He dealt another blow while I was still trying to process his words. As everything went dark before my eyes, my mind went blank. However, he didn't yet realize that he would be the one to lose everything. I'm Muriel, a 28-year-old housewife. I've been married for 3 years. My husband Pete is 34. He works as a sales representative at a major trading company and is considered a promising employee. I used to work at the same company. I had always loved mathematics since childhood and majored in it through graduate school, but I couldn't secure a research position. When I started job hunting, feeling the barriers of being a woman in research, I chose to join a trading company instead. That's where I met Pete, who would later become my husband. Feel free to ask me anything. Pete cheerfully called out to me when I was assigned to his department. I hate to brag, but I had been a finalist in a college beauty pageant and was quite tall, so I stood out among the new employees. Thank you so much. I responded with a bright smile. Throughout my student years, many men had shown interest in me, but they only saw my appearance and never really listened to what I had to say. I had gotten used to brushing them off with a polite smile. But Pete seemed different. Perhaps I had been naive, having spent most of my time in university research labs, discussing with like-minded peers. Despite my flashy appearance, I was surprisingly shy and reserved. Muriel, are you seeing anyone? When Pete asked me this, I replied with a shy laugh, no, I'm not. My response seemed to surprise him, and he smiled bashfully. Would you like to go out with me? When he asked me directly, I nodded sincerely. I had never been asked out so earnestly before. That's how my relationship with Pete began. Pete always took me to lovely places and restaurants. Everything was a new experience for me, having rarely ventured beyond the university campus. After a year, he presented me with a ring during my birthday dinner. Let's get married. When he said those words, I felt like I was floating on air, thinking that movie-like moments really do happen. I accepted his proposal with a nod. And I'd like you to quit your job and wait for me at home. Would that be okay? Pete continued. Is that a condition? That's fine with me, I answered. I didn't particularly have anything I wanted to do at the company anyway, and I thought that as a housewife, I could read books in between household chores. Later, we went to meet each other's parents. My parents were overjoyed. No wonder their daughter, who had always dressed plainly and conducted unclear research at university, was introducing her future husband. My family was what you'd call wealthy, owning numerous properties and buildings, with my parents living off the rental income. With no need to work for living expenses, they ran a cafe as a hobby next to our house. When they heard about our marriage, they offered to build us a house on some land a little distance from the family home. They said it would be their gift, so we wouldn't need to pay anything. The only condition was that since I was an only child, they wanted Pete to take my family name. Pete was surprised to learn that my family was wealthy, and even more surprised by my parents' offer to provide us with a new house. Understandable, considering his colleagues had to work while carrying housing loans, yet he would get a house without paying a single dollar. Several months later, after our wedding ceremony and honeymoon, we began our life in our new home. As my husband wished, I quit my job and became a full-time housewife. I was naive to think that being a housewife meant having plenty of leisure time. I would wake up early to prepare breakfast, see my husband off, do the dishes, handle laundry while cleaning the yard, and by then it would already be noon. After a quick lunch, I'd start cleaning the house. Living in a detached house is tough. I was exhausted. Just when I'd catch my breath, it would be time to prepare dinner. There was no time to read books. Sometimes I was too tired and forgot to prepare dinner. On such occasions, my husband would yell furiously. "I'm tired from work. No dinner or bath ready. What kind of housewife are you?" Even when he said such things, I'm not a robot. There are times when I don't feel well, and when I can't do something, I just can't. "Sorry about earlier," he would say, and then at night, he would sweetly try to initiate intimacy. When I refused, saying, "I'm sleepy, let me sleep," he would immediately become sullen. I would reluctantly give in, just wishing to get some sleep. Still, I convinced myself that this was just how married life was. My husband, working for the trading company, often had overtime work and business trips for import negotiations. During such times, I felt a sense of peace in exchange for the loneliness of being alone. As we entered our second year of marriage, my husband's attitude toward me clearly changed. Previously, even after yelling roughly, he would still show affection, but now he would often just go straight to bed. While he still had frequent overtime and business trips, something felt different. Looking back, that might have been a sign of his infidelity. When I gathered the courage to ask him about it, he replied with an annoyed expression, "I've recently become responsible for new product planning. I'm busy. Could you leave me alone for a while?" At that time, I still believed what my husband said. One night, my husband came home unusually early and sought intimacy with me after a long time. Even I must have been feeling frustrated, as I responded willingly. "Huh? What's this?" my husband said while touching my breast. When I felt it too, there was a hard lump in my left breast. "You're right. There's something there." Since there was no pain, I hadn't noticed it until then. The next day, worried, I searched online for a nearby gynecologist to get checked. Fortunately, there was a well-reviewed hospital nearby, so I immediately made an appointment. On the day of the examination, a kind-looking female doctor greeted me with a smile as I entered the examination room, feeling overwhelmed with anxiety. "Don't worry, it's okay. Could you remove your bra, keep your shirt on, and lie down here?" I lay down on the examination table as instructed. She felt around with her palm, occasionally pressing with her fingers to check for hard spots. Then came the chest X-ray, mammography, and more tests. After that, blood tests and a needle biopsy of the lump for cell testing. When the tests were done, she said, "We won't have all the results today, but I'll contact you when they're ready." Though she was smiling, her face seemed sadder than when I had arrived. That night, I wanted to talk to my husband, but he didn't come home. I spent an anxious night alone. The next day, when my husband returned from work at night, I questioned him about the previous night. Sudden work came up, and I had to prepare documents. "Sorry I didn't contact you," he said. "So? How was the examination?" he asked in a disinterested voice. "The results aren't in yet, but from the doctor's demeanor, it doesn't seem good," I said, tearing up. I was so anxious. "What? It's not okay," my husband said without even looking at me. Did he not care about me anymore? The tears I had been holding back rolled down my cheeks. My husband didn't even notice, absorbed in exchanging messages on his smartphone. I collapsed onto the bed, and when I came to, I had fallen asleep with tears soaking my pillow. Morning light streamed into the room, but my husband was already gone. A few days later, I received a call that the test results were ready. My heart sank. Even though I wanted to talk to someone, my husband hadn't come home since that day. When I entered the examination room, the doctor had a solemn expression. "Please, have a seat," she said. I sat down as told. "We suspect breast cancer. I'll write you a referral to a larger hospital. Which one would you prefer?" the doctor informed me. I was too shocked to think clearly. "Wherever you recommend would be fine," was all I could manage to say. The doctor named the nearest large general hospital. "Yes, please refer me there," I said. At that point, I didn't care where, as long as I could receive treatment. Later, I went to the referred hospital with the referral letter. I underwent another round of tests, including an EKG and lung examination this time. Apparently, they needed to check if I had enough strength for surgery. After that came the consultation. "Would you like to know all the test results?" the doctor asked quietly. "Of course, please tell me everything without hiding anything," I answered. "In that case, please come back with your family another day to discuss the detailed symptoms and treatment plan," the doctor said. Yes, I nodded, thinking I needed to tell my husband and parents. When my husband finally came home, I told him about it. Do I have to go too? I'm busy with work." "Wouldn't just your parents be enough?" he said dismissively. "Don't you care about my health?" I wanted to scream. "Please don't say that. I want you to hear it with me," I managed to whisper, my voice trembling. "Fine. I'll try to arrange something," my husband reluctantly agreed. The next day, I visited my parents' cafe and asked them to come hear the diagnosis with me. I had told them about getting tests due to health issues, but when they heard my story, I saw them more distraught than I'd ever seen before. "But it's curable, right? You'll be okay, right?" my mother asked, on the verge of tears. I couldn't answer such questions because I didn't know. We were supposed to hear about the treatment together as a family. I arrived at the hospital a bit early with my parents on the appointed day, feeling compressed by stress, and waited for my husband to arrive. However, there was no sign of him coming no matter how long we waited. I tried calling his cell phone. "Oh, was that today? Sorry, but I have an important meeting coming up," he said. How could this be? I had definitely told him about it. Had he not been listening? "Where's Pete?" my father asked worriedly. "He has sudden work. Can't be helped," I answered with a forced smile. I knew it looked unnatural, but I had no choice. The conclusion was that I had breast cancer. The word cancer from the doctor's mouth was heavier than I had imagined. My feet felt heavy on the way home. "It's breast cancer," I told my husband when he returned from work. "Oh, is that so?" he replied coldly. How could he be so indifferent when his wife had such a serious illness? "And I'm having surgery the week after next. I might lose my left breast," I managed to say, suppressing the urge to cry. "Can't be helped if it's an illness, right?" my husband said lightly. "Is that all? Are you really okay with what's happening to me?" I couldn't help but cry out to my husband, then locked myself in the bedroom. From that day on, my husband didn't show his face. I cried every day from anxiety. Accompanied by my parents, I entered the hospital on my admission day. Would my husband not come even on a day like this? The thought made me sad again. Then, on the day before surgery, my husband suddenly appeared in my hospital room. I thought he had finally become worried and come to visit, but I couldn't believe the words that came out of his mouth. "After your surgery and discharge, go back to your parents' house. You might lose your left breast, right? I don't want a woman like that. What a cruel man. Aren't couples supposed to support each other at times like this? I cried out, but my husband left the room without saying anything. I wondered if I would be okay having surgery with such feelings. However, strangely, strength welled up inside me. I won't let my husband have his way. I'll beat this illness no matter what. That's how I felt. On the morning of the surgery, I told my parents about what my husband had said the previous day. Pete said that? Break up with such a man, my father said, showing his anger. That's right, Muriel. I never thought he would say such cruel things, let alone not be by your side when you're going through such a difficult time. My mother couldn't contain her anger towards my husband either. Yes, but right now, I want you to pray for my surgery's success. I won't give up, I said as I headed to the operating room. After the surgery, I woke up in the intensive care unit. I would be connected to monitors for one night until the anesthesia wore off completely and my condition stabilized. Fortunately, the cancer hadn't spread as much as they thought, and they didn't need to remove my entire left breast. I felt a bit relieved. The doctor said if my wound healed well, I could be discharged in about 2 weeks for home recovery. However, about a week after moving to the general ward, I suddenly received a call from my mother. She said my father had collapsed and been taken by ambulance. It was a heart attack, and it was too late by the time they reached the hospital. Just when my surgery had gone well and I was looking at discharge, I never imagined such misfortune would befall my father. Since I was hospitalized and couldn't do anything, my mother and relatives somehow managed the funeral. Even at a time like this, my husband couldn't be reached. When I contacted his company, they said he was on a business trip abroad and wouldn't be back for a while. I asked them to please have him contact me since my father had passed away. I felt frustrated that I couldn't do anything when my father, who had worried so much about me, had died. After discharge, I returned to my parents' home. Not because my husband had told me to, but because I needed to discuss the inheritance matters with my mother. In the midst of this, I received a phone call from my husband. Congratulations on your discharge. I heard your father passed away? My condolences. By the way, I have something to discuss. Could you come to the house? Despite his father-in-law's death, my husband's tone was cheerful, as if he had been waiting for this. All right, how about this Sunday? I spoke as calmly as I could. Okay. I'll be waiting, my husband replied and hung up. Mom, whose name is on the deed for our house and land? I asked my mother. They should be in your father's name, including the house ownership. Why, my mother answered. Can you get those documents ready by Sunday? I asked. Get them ready? All the documents for your father's real estate are right here, my mother said while laying out the papers on the table. That Sunday, I headed to meet my husband, carrying completed divorce papers and all the documents related to our house, having already decided on divorce in my heart. My husband was waiting at home with a young woman. Though she wore somewhat flashy makeup, her face still had traces of youth. I was angry that my husband had chosen such a woman over me. Come on in. Well, I suppose it's still your house too. My husband said with a shameless grin. This is what you want, right? I held out the divorce papers to my husband. You catch on quick. Makes things easier. My husband filled out the divorce papers without hesitation and returned them to me. The woman sat silently beside my husband, watching us. It's perfect timing that your father died. Now this house is mine, my husband said with a pleased expression. Huh? What are you talking about? I deliberately said in an exaggerated tone. Laying out the documents on the living room table, I continued, where is your name on any of this? This house belonged to my father. What are you misunderstanding? I raised my voice as if dumbfounded. This house was given to us by your father, and when I decided to take your family name, doesn't that make me your father's heir? My husband said with a serious face. If he really thought that, it was absurd. Did you enter into adoption with my father? No, right? Do you even have ownership rights to this house? Do you remember signing any documents? The heirs to my father's estate are my mother and me. You have no inheritance rights. I stated firmly. You're just my spouse, nothing more, nothing less. You have nothing to do with my father's inheritance. At this, my husband stammered, what? But then how? Suddenly becoming flustered. Hey. This isn't what you said. You told me you'd divorce your wife and we could have the house, that's why I went along with you. The woman sitting beside my husband angrily pouted. I have your signed divorce papers, and once I submit these to the city office, we won't be husband and wife anymore. You're free to marry this woman. But about this house that I'm set to inherit, what are you two planning to do? When I waved the divorce papers while speaking, my husband collapsed to his knees on the spot. Well, if you want to keep living here, I could sell it to you. However, land prices in this area have gone up, so it won't be cheap. I said deliberately cheerfully. My husband suddenly looked up and asked, how much? Yeah, if you can afford it, just buy it. Buy it, the woman said while nudging my husband's side. How about around $1 million for the house and land? I had meant to exaggerate a bit, but property values in this area had risen. If we actually got an appraisal for the land and house combined, it would probably come to about that much. $1 million? There's no way I can pay that. Are you kidding? That's extortion. It's way too expensive, my husband and the woman cried out in anguish. If you think it's too high, feel free to consult a real estate appraiser. But I don't think it's as cheap as you imagine, I declared firmly. Perhaps overcoming surgery had given me courage. For someone who used to be so timid, I surprised myself with my assertiveness. People really can change. You're something else, you know that? Did you think that just because you took my family name, you'd automatically get my father's assets? You really don't know anything, do you? I said, mockingly scorning my husband's ignorance. Okay, I apologize. I'm sorry. The divorce thing was just a joke. She's just a fling. So don't take it seriously, okay? My husband suddenly started speaking in a fawning, sweet voice. How awful. What's going on? You told me you'd divorce your wife and marry me so we could live in this house. Was that all a lie? The woman glared at my husband angrily. You said you were going to divorce your wife and that this house was yours. Everything you told me was completely different. The woman's face was red with anger. You said you had no use for a woman who lost her breast, right? Go live with that woman. You two deserve each other. I coldly dismissed my husband. Then I added, oh, I'll give you a week to decide. If you're going to leave, then leave quickly. Anything left after that, I'm throwing away. Good luck with that. I left the house with those parting words. I could hear a high-pitched voice berating my husband and the sound of something breaking from inside, but that wasn't my concern. I figured I'd bill them later for anything they broke. I submitted the divorce papers to the city office. I didn't hesitate at all. I thought I should have gathered evidence of his affair and demanded compensation, but I didn't want anything more to do with such a man. I do think that if I hadn't stayed cooped up in the university lab and had learned more about the real world, I might not have fallen for such a superficial man. Though I worry about cancer recurrence, I won't give up. Life is just beginning. I heard from a former colleague that the woman my ex-husband was with turned out to be his junior at the company. Apparently, they became intimate while working overtime and traveling together on the same product planning team. When word of this reached upper management, they were both removed from the team and transferred to different departments. The woman, unable to bear the office rumors, resigned. My ex-husband was assigned to inventory management at an import warehouse near the port, where he now spends his days doing warehouse rounds. While he technically got a promotion in title, it was effectively a demotion. The company probably just wanted to get rid of him. What a miserable end for someone who had been considered promising. I inherited my father's estate, splitting it with my mother. Because property values had risen so much, we couldn't afford all the inheritance taxes and had to pay about half of the land assets in kind. The remaining rental income and cafe earnings should be enough to cover my mother's living expenses. I took over the house where I had lived with my ex-husband and opened a tutoring school there. There are many children who struggle with math, which I loved. I decided to accept students from elementary through high school, hoping to share the joy of mathematics with them. I'll be happy if even a few children discover how fun math can be. I've also started working on the thesis I left unfinished in graduate school. Someday, when things settle down, I'd like to return to graduate school and resume my research.